have with us the incredible Rena Shah. How often do people do a little bit of a pun on your last name with like Shah 256 out of curiosity?
A lot of Shah 256 and then a lot of Queen of the Miners because Rena Queen. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
And it gets even better. I used to be a miner.
That's amazing.
I'm just saying.
I live in an old mining town, a historic mining town, so that's pretty cool too. I mine at home.
I used to be, I still mine at home, but in the oil fields, so it's like even more fun of like one commodity, other commodity, all the same.
So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah.
Because you dove into it, but let's hear all of it.
Yeah. So I've grew up in Houston and then like moved all around the Gulf Coast. So, like everything I knew was oil, and so I always wanted to be a part of something global. And so in college studied petroleum engineering, like nothing that you would be unexpected. And I worked in the oil fields right out of college as a drilling engineer. And so imagine being like 22. Getting sent to the drill ship to the middle of nowhere in the Gulf and living out there for like a multitude of months at a time and just like doing the thing. And it was actually while in the oil field, I learned about Bitcoin and I learned about the mining impact of Bitcoin, how people use the physical commodity that I was producing to create something digital. And that's what like really clicked for it. And so I left my job in the oil fields and started mining at home. And then it got a little bit out of control that I was buying ASICs and needing server spaces and then really needed to like make a bigger mining operations. And so I
set up multiple home heaters.
Think bigger than that, because remember, I came from the oil field, so I partnered with drilling ops kind of fields in West Texas and things like that and converted their abandoned land for my mining ops.
Oh, amazing.
And then it gets better. We put some solar panels all above it, green energy tax credit, just like that.
Wow.
And so that's what brought me into Bitcoin, and then I never looked back since.
And then you further dove down various other rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Which now you are working on Bitcoin naming systems.
Yeah, so like...
How did you get there?
A whole different way. So like to understand like why I'm so passionate about BNS, it's like thinking about where I came from. So like prior to being at Trust Machines building these products directly on Bitcoin, I was Binance US. And I think everybody knows the power of community that someone like CZ has created. The idea of you have your you have your GMs, you have your SAFU and everything like that. And so when you think about the culture of us in crypto, it's all about memes, your street cred, who are you? And so what actually stood out to me is there wasn't a naming system or identity, kind of Web3 identity, built on Bitcoin. And so that's kind of why I went down this hole of building these products to actually connect everyday people to community. The more and more you think about it, all of us are here right now because we value in-person connection, but we have our digital persona too, and you want them to match.
Okay. So can you dive into a little bit of the history of the history of BNS and how on-chain naming has evolved?
If I can like...
I think the computer's out. Okay, cool.
So like if we were, look, we all know Bitcoin is internet money. This is like what brought us into the industry in the first place of when you think about 2008 when this came about, we were all getting wrecked by our own governments no matter where you were. And
still are.
100%. And we as a community kind of went together and really honed in on like, what does it mean to have trust without centralization? And that's where Bitcoin came about. And so we have this idea of digital money, but we've never actually used the chain that it was created on. We only think about BTC, the asset, not the rails. And I actually have always thought the chain had so much potential on it's a bedrock foundation, you can build on top of it, but no one really does much with it. And so when I was thinking about what kind of goes next, I thought about, look, we're inherently social. Bitcoin is kind of your street cred. It is your lifestyle. It is everything that brings you to want to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And so to do this, you really needed a kind of a digital identity that mapped to it. And so that's actually where BNS came from, the Bitcoin naming system. It was like the nods came from 2015, so like before anything ENS, Solana, any of that,
Wow.
it was always on Bitcoin. And so this came from the idea of one name and name coin, or excuse me, names. And the idea was like there were all these cypherpunks who believed that we needed some sort of like community flagship on Bitcoin. And so that's actually where the .btc kind of Web3 identifier came. And when you think about that, it now is kind of like your gateway of connecting IRL to like what's in your wallet into how that defines your ethos and like what you contribute to.
How's that different from like in Nostr, we have,
Yep.
private public key pair as well, and we can export your own identity to different applications built on top of Nostr. How is that different or the same from what you're building?
They're a little bit similar and a little bit separate too. So like Nostr only has interoperability within like anything built on the Nostr system, and that's it. What I'm building actually connects to like ICANN and Web2. And so like I can hit the entire global world. So like let me see if how we kind of went this is that we built it on top of the Stacks Bitcoin L2. And so basically the idea was we needed to scale beyond what just the base layer, because I didn't want to clog the network on Bitcoin of these transactions going back and forth of people creating names and kind of doing their transaction history. So we built on Stacks L2. But as you think about kind of going a few steps further, we are a really small industry of people. We're only like couple 100 million Bitcoin wallets, things like that. How do you get to 8 billion? And so that's kind of where we differ from Nostr. Nostr is the tiniest of the communities. We're growing, and I love Nostr. I've built a front end for Nostr called Nostr Chat.
Okay.
So like, no, we have deep rods for having decentralization, but I just felt that if you want the world to be where we are in like a Bitcoin only vision or a Bitcoin first vision, you have to kind of bring them in. And so with what I've built for like the .btc names and all of the other namespaces that we're building, it basically means that when I buy this domain, I have my Web3 identity, but I also have the website directly from ICANN. And GoDaddy is our distribution partner.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm hitting 360 million people just like that.
That's amazing. And so, because usually, so I own a few domains, and I have to remember to renew. Is it a one-time thing on the Bitcoin?
So it's similar to that. So like you have basically you buy once for the actual like namespace, but then you have to obviously renew through on the Web2 side.
Yeah.
But that only occurs every 5 years. So we've abstracted everything to it. But what kind of really mattered to me was that the idea of I felt that we were kind of missing the mark as an industry of staying so insular in our own community, and we were not kind of growing beyond. And so to do the idea of building namespaces on top of Bitcoin, using Bitcoin L2s, connecting existing TLDs, and having all of those double as your Bitcoin wallet, as your Bitcoin identity, as your kind of gateway into Bitcoin apps, that market is like pretty untapped.
Yeah. So on your BNS, like I could tip you just like on Nostr, or?
If you sent anything to Rena.Bitcoin or Rena.BTC, it will go to my native Segwit wallet.
Okay.
It can also double to my Stacks kind of Bitcoin L2. I could receive NFTs. I could receive Ordinals. I have a Taproot kind of, even more so if you're into like all the meta on Bitcoin, runes, BRC20s, all of that. And so like when I thought about what the existing namespace looked like, no one was solving for like every facet of Bitcoin. And so like that was really important to me.
Yeah. Where do you think, were you predicting that the on-chain digital identity, how's it going to break through to Web 2.0? Because like we're living in this 3.0 world.
Yeah.
So how do you think that, we intersect and make it grow?
So I think it's like a two-part thing, but like the way I'm seeing it is like we We basically have like our Web3 highway that we're driving around and such, and we're like building for our own things. But if we want to go beyond, you're going to need some sort of bike to get you back to like the Web2 world. And so like the solution that we're building kind of connects to both, and that's actually how like the on-chain economy grows. And like I'll say why this is like so important to us to do this on Stacks. I have like deep fear on the Bitcoin network that over time, as mining rewards become lower and lower, who's going to continue to validate and kind of produce on the Bitcoin network and like sustain the network? The reason we chose to build on Stacks is that when you mine on the Stacks blockchain, which is a Bitcoin L2, all of the commits are back in Bitcoin, and so we're constantly sending transactions back to Bitcoin, so we're securing the Bitcoin network too. And so when I think about doing a namespace, if I'm going to hit hundreds of millions of people, I want those transactions to be back to Bitcoin, so I'm doing something good for Bitcoin. And like I felt like that was super important.
Can you give a little bit of an overview on Stacks for those who maybe aren't as familiar with it?
So Stacks is a Bitcoin L2. It started in 2017 under Munib Ali. It was kind of the idea of Satoshi, if you looked at like the early Satoshi chats, had always thought that you should build on top of Bitcoin and kind of build an app economy and things like that. But we all know that Bitcoin is like purposely and beautifully designed to be simple. It really is kind of a global ledger, and it doesn't have like expressive, robust smart contract capability. And so you need to have some sort of smart contract function to do what you would do in like the Ethereum world or Solana world or any of that to build the dApps on Bitcoin. And so what Stacks does, it has like a pretty unique consensus mechanism called proof of transfer. Essentially, it recycles proof of work from Bitcoin and creates like an optimistic roll-up so that you can roll up all your transactions still to one Bitcoin block, so you get Bitcoin finality, but it's done on a 5-second timeline. So like for people like me who are building like DeFi products as well, Bitcoin was unusable for me to do Bitcoin DeFi. I can't do a 10-minute block because you can't like liquidate a loan. And so I needed something a little bit different to kind of bring these products to market. And that's really where the Stacks Bitcoin L2 kind of shines.
Oh, thanks for that. So there's this whole ecosystem being built, whether it's on Stacks or in the Bitcoin
There's other
DeFi
L2s.
exactly,
Yeah, exactly.
ecosystem. How do you see that fitting in with BNS?
So BNS is a little bit like omni-chain agnostic when it comes to Bitcoin, so it can support any Bitcoin L2. It doesn't matter to me. Like that's, if you believe in Bitcoin, then you believe in like every single aspect of Bitcoin, whether you are for L2s or against. Some people have very staunch opinions, and I that's fine, and we don't care. The idea is, but if you identify as a Bitcoiner, that's really what matters.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you really wanted to share?
Let me see, because I actually don't remember what I put in my presentation, to be frank.
We decided to change it up, make it more fun, by a
Fireside,
conversation.
But this is actually one thing I do want to show. When you think about Bitcoin, we're a $1 trillion asset class, but there is no value built on top of Bitcoin. And I'll be honest, we are just kind of scratching the surface on building Bitcoin L2s, stable coins, all of these app economy back on Bitcoin. Look at it to Ethereum. So Ethereum is a tinier asset in terms of like asset value, but all of the value built is below the surface on Ethereum for L2s and such. If you kind of took that lens and did it on Bitcoin, Bitcoin will continue to be outpacing all of EVM DeFi, Solana DeFi, if we actually took the time and energy to build it. And like this is right now the apex cycle of everybody getting back into Bitcoin. So like I think it's pretty powerful to think that dApps and such could be built on Bitcoin, but no one is really kind of going to that layer.
How do we stimulate more of that building?
You have to do like a flywheel circular economy. So like the more transactions L2s are doing, so long as they are rolling up or kind of validating back to Bitcoin, then we're kind of flywheel supporting Bitcoin, because the more transactions coming on Bitcoin, in theory, the network stays more robust. It continues its Lindy effect, and the asset price should appreciate in theory, right? So like we're always trying to create that economy back. But if you don't have products in Bitcoin, like will Bitcoin keep its value? Like, will people continue to use the Bitcoin network? It's like a catch-22. Like, Ethereum has value not from ETH the asset. No one cares about ETH the asset. Let's be like, ETH is going to crash.
Versus Bitcoin the asset.
Well, like ETH is going to crash. Even like the ETH community is like in their own world of like, do we censor, do we not? Unclear what to do. But the value of everything built on the Ethereum network is the products, dApps, stablecoins, DeFi, everything, NFTs and such there. And like what kind of breaks my heart is that this actually all started on Bitcoin and then we kind of abandoned it. So like you had colored coins, or Pepe, everything started on Bitcoin first, but then in order for it to scale, you really needed L2s, and that just was not kind of in the thesis early on.
Yeah. Where do you think the biggest untapped potential is? Like what segment of
DeFi. Like
DeFi,
okay, so like we're building a DeFi product in-house called Granite. Basically, the idea of you should be able to take a loan out your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But you should be able to do it in native Bitcoin. I should not have to wrap my Bitcoin, change my Bitcoin form. So the way we're approaching it is taking DLCs. You put your Bitcoin collateral in a DLC. No one else can really access your DLC except for the protocol in the event you're getting liquidated. But if you did it like that and did it in a secure way, think about how many of us would probably take some liquidity against your Bitcoin. There was like the idea of like doing Bitcoin mortgage loans, things like that. But like I hold a lot of Bitcoin. I've been mining for a while, but I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin. I'm never going to like touch my Bitcoin anything other than some ordinals, because you know we like a little degen too. But if I was to take a loan against it in a safe and secure manner, I could get liquidity in a way that's still privacy focused. It's on chain, but I don't have to KYC through a bank or anything like that. So like what we're building is the equivalent of BlockFi on chain.
Yeah, because I actually just recently, this week, took a small loan. And for the first time, they asked me, what are you using this money for? Only because the Canadian government wants to know, but it's kind of like, oh man, we keep diving even further and further down the like private, like losing privacy.
Or the even the more fun part, what do you do for work? And when they hear about Bitcoin, they're out.
Yeah.
You don't get funded.
And there's way less options too, because so many of the players that were offering loans got thrown up in the last cycle, so there's a few handful left.
But it's like you want to do it on chain. Like I should be able to see when I'm like supplying stable coins into a pool, who is borrowing from, like who is pulling from it, seeing where they're putting it on chain, what they're doing. If I can see that they're like 3x leveraging my asset, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to pull my supply back. But that transparency is needed, and you get it in the Ethereum world, but we really haven't built into the Bitcoin world till now.
So with some of the recent rulings around privacy, and especially in the US, like anything basically, if you're a developer and you develop code, you can be seen as a money transmitter. Is that kind of concern you in how you build?
No, and that's like part of the reason why we're using Stacks to build. So Stacks did a regulated offering with the SEC. It is the only asset to go through a full SEC approval of doing a regulated offering in 2019 as a Reg A, doing the purposeful decentralization, breaking up how you think about core developers, treasuries, sales, marketing, all through public working groups. Stacks has no action letters from the SEC, and so that's actually why we're using this L2 versus like other Bitcoin L2s. I have like done a lot of experimentation to try to see if I can build this straight on Bitcoin L1. So like there might be functionality with BitVM coming, or kind of some of like OPCAT that might make this possible to do directly on the L1, but still I can't really get around the 10-minute block times.
Okay. Well, thank you. I do want to open it up if anyone has any questions.
Yes.
Shoot.
First, like, I assume you have these no action letters like framed. Because that's what.
Anyways.
You mentioned earlier wanting to do namespacing on Bitcoin in a really broad way, and you hinted at there being existing players in the ecosystem, but like that didn't really match what you were looking for.
Yeah.
I guess like what was I know nothing about like Bitcoin namespacing, and I guess I'm curious like what was the ecosystem at the time, and I guess what exactly about the existing ecosystem were you looking to change to broaden?
So the existing like ecosystem prior to like what we're building for like BNS was just doing the namespace, just the identity. It had no tie to like building a website, kind of doing any of that, having like email or anything like that. But even more so, it wasn't built through like decentralized rails, through like IPFS or things like that. And so like the system we've built the entire Web3 side on Bitcoin is done through decentralized storage, decentralized compute, everything like that. And then it has like a native kind of Bitcoin wallet that you can have with it affiliated. Even more so than that, you can have the same equivalent on Web2. So like when I buy, the namespace that we're creating is called .locker. So it's like the idea of like, show me your locker, just like show me your wallet, or like if you're a chick, what's in your bag, my favorite. So like what I've built is like if I buy Rena.locker, I have the full distribution to anything I want to do in Web2 as is. So launch a site, whatever I want. I also have Rena.locker as my Bitcoin wallet kind of resolver. More so than that, I can do a decentralized IPFS website or inscribe it through Sybil and actually do the full like website end to end. So what it means if, let's say, I get moderated by someone by ICANN because they don't love my website for whatever reason, because I've like broken something, I will continue to have the same thing still on decentralized Rails. So it's the only system that we've built that syncs kind of all across.
Okay, so it's a combination of like the tooling, like ecosystem tooling and the integration. I'm assuming like the idea of doing resolution of wallets did exist before, just because it's very straightforward. Okay, because that side I'm assuming is already there.
That's been done, but when you were doing the resolution of Bitcoin, originally it only did one Bitcoin form address, but what we did was kind of upgrade it to both SegWit and Taproot.
Seems like unnecessarily limiting.
Don't I know it?
That's the easy use.
But yeah, no, it's like you want to be able to support every facet of Bitcoin. So like I had to kind of do separate resolvers through the API for SegWit and Taproot so that people don't accidentally try to send an ordinal to a SegWit side. We've built, literally had to build everything from scratch. But then it makes it so simple that if you want to send me something to like Rena.locker, you don't have to think about what address type do I have. You don't have to think about any of that. It's abstracted because we built the infrastructure around it. And it all stays on chain.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Can I have a .btc address, and that is my address on Bitcoin?
.btc, yeah. So you can do .btc both on StackSL2 and Bitcoin L1.
But how do in Ethereum, for example, or Ethereum Classic, you get the .eth or .btc, and in a wallet you put that and you send Ether, and you send BTC. In this, you can also I can send you one Bitcoin to your
Any form, correct.
Bitcoin domain.
Exactly.
On the Bitcoin network.
On the Bitcoin network. So like we've done it in a way that we're agnostic whether it's L1 or L2, it doesn't matter to us. We're just doing the smart contracts on the StackSL2 to keep it a little bit more like economical from like a user perspective for fees, because like I don't want someone to be stuck in like a clogged mempool when someone decides to like release a new token standard on Bitcoin, like a new rune or something. So like we chose to do this on the L2 just because the fees are like 1 or 2 cents.
But your BTC domain name is associated or attached to an address on the
On the of course.
It's associated to one single address.
So when you
I can send you to that address or to your domain name.
doesn't matter.
And
And you
where
can,
does the transaction go? When I have my wallet and I press send, it goes to Stacks processes it, and then it sends.
so if you're sending me just Bitcoin, like just native Bitcoin, it's going to go on the Bitcoin chain. If you're sending me something in a different,
Yeah, but is the L1 going to understand the domain name?
it does.
The L1?
Yeah.
Oh,
We've built like the full systems and like on the L1 side, we did build everything through Bitcoin Core.
Bitcoin what?
Bitcoin Core, which is like the scripting language for Bitcoin.
So the L1 understands a common address and also understands .btc domain names.
Yeah,
Well, post-resolution, right?
exactly.
Huh?
That's it.
Because I mean, after the resolution, I mean, the chain doesn't understand the resolution itself.
But the API call for post.
Well, actually, that's not the question. That's too.
That's what I'm trying, because the L1 would be receiving a transaction that is going to, let's say, Donald.btc. The L1 understands that, or it has to be resolved somewhere else,
It goes through
and
like
then
a,
communicated to the L1.
Everything goes through like a resolver for sure. Like that, there's like a resolver API that's universal and it's like a standard used across Bitcoin. ENS has the same standard. Like everyone uses one resolver that's like universally built and maintained.
It's what?
The resolver is universally built and maintained. So there is anybody who operates a namespace must contribute to a resolver.
But that's an L2 system.
It's
Resolving.
You can do it on a band.
It's outside of the blockchain.
yeah,
Outside of Bitcoin.
right.
But that's what I'm trying to differentiate. In Ethereum, it's inside Ethereum, and in ETC, it's outside Ethereum.
That's the limiting factor of.
Sure, so I mean, if it's like, if you want to propose consensus,
It's important to differentiate these things. What is outside?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to do everything in directly with Bitcoin on like through the blockchain, but we don't have like smart contract functionality. Now with OpCat, it might be possible to actually do this directly like within the Bitcoin blockchain.
Opcat is an opcode in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's an opcode.
But that might be like the next step to actually bringing it back because Ethereum you can do full smart contracts, so they don't have the same limitation as Bitcoin.
Opcat is an opcode.
Correct.
Is that already integrated in Bitcoin?
It's a potential soft fork into Bitcoin.
So it's really outside of Bitcoin
Yeah.
service that interacts with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's like I would love to do everything just directly on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin as like a code base and kind of core would drastically have to
I
change.
know that.
Yeah.
I know the limitations. The thing is that it's important to know
Yeah.
and to say it.
Yeah.
That's outside of Bitcoin.
Well, one more question.
Because it has
Yeah.
to do with the security of the system, the true
Yeah.
security of the system.
I mean, in the interest of time, so I guess how are resolvers maintained? I mean, you could, if there's like one central resolver, that's one single point of failure of possible malicious activity. So if I am going to be doing resolution, how do you ensure that that is done in a manner that is robust?
So it's done by basically a consortium of any party who operates a namespace in Web 2 or Web 3 has to maintain like this. It's kind of like it's called like a blockchain resolver, and it's maintained by I want to say 15 different parties. All
Is it one entity that I'm querying, or is it much like the DNS system?
DNS systems, so it's you can query as many as you want.
So it is distributed to be robust.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair.
That's like, what happens when this is resolved?
No, it's totally fair. Everything is very much aligned to DNS, full open source through GitHub. Anyone can commit. A little bit.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was
That was
an
fun.
awesome, fun chat.